so I assume you already know who I am. My name is Tristan Tate. I wear the finest suits, travel to the most deluxe locations on Earth, but despite all of this, I started off with nothing. No silver spoon in my mouth, no network, no class, no friends, and no connections. But despite all of that, I've reached the highest echelons of society. And let me tell you, having money alone will not get you there. Your network is your net worth. And to build connections, first, you have to build yourself. You need to become the kind of man who can walk into any room with anybody and take over the conversation. I can teach you how to become that man, because I am that man.
A brokey is somebody who cannot live within the means that they dream of to have a great standard of life. I understand that there are people who don't make very much money, who live on a farm, grow their own food, have apple trees in their garden, have a wife, have chickens, have pigs, have cows, have their family, and they're bringing in 60, 70,000 a year, but they're living in a field of abundance. Their life still has abundance and they have everything they want because they've manufactured a system in their life where they have everything they want. Brokey, I can only talk about from my standpoint because I am a consumer capitalist. I want the nice things that consumer capitalism offers to the people. I want the world's fastest cars. I want a sports car. I want a big house. I want luxury watches. I want all the nice things, custom-made suits that consumer capitalism offers to everybody if you have the money to buy it. So I think a brokey is somebody who can't have the things that they want. It's very simple. If you want a nice car and a nice house and a nice watch and you have a Porsche and a 3-bedroom house and a standard Rolex, nice pair of shoes, couple suits, and you're happy with that, then you are not a brokey. Whereas if you're sitting there in the exact same setup, crying your eyes out that you can't afford a Bugatti, crying that you're still flying economy and not first class, then you are in fact a brokey because you haven't found a way to make your expectations match your work ethic, your income, and everything else that's being delivered by life. That's what makes you a brokey. Are you happy? Yes or no? Do you have enough? Yes or no? I do.
Yeah, if you want to start creating content, again, see what sticks. Start recording your life. Obviously, the very boring parts of your life are never gonna make for good viewing anywhere. But that's essentially what me and Andrew did. We started just documenting the things we did. Spending money, buying cars, going shopping. Then Andrew would talk about news topics. We used to call it offending what's trending. And this is about 10 years ago. So we'd find something that was prominent in the news and Andrew would rant about it and talk about it. And that turned out to be far more popular than us buying Lamborghinis or, hanging around women and going to nightclubs and all the other stuff we were recording. It was these tiny little segments of Andrew ranting about current affairs that I think was the beginning of his rise to stardom. And now he's still famous for doing exactly that. That's essentially what the Emergency Meeting podcasts are. It's me and Andrew talking about what's going on in the world in our unique comedic way. So if you don't know what to do, record everything and see what gets views, see what goes viral, see what people share. I think people evolve over time anyway. The content I was making when I was 25, I still ran my webcam studio back then. I had no kids back then. I was just some young guy. I was making pretty decent money. I had 2 supercars and a rented house. I was doing okay for myself. But I think the content changed as I changed as a person, as I grew up. You can actually watch a chronological timeline of me growing up if you follow my content closely enough and you were to go back far enough and find all of my old videos. So I don't think you necessarily need to diversify purposefully. I think that it will happen accidentally anyway. If you are popular and if people do watch you, you do grow up and you do change your mind on certain things. And then your content becomes different. Obviously, when you're in a position like I am, people love to throw your old content back at you. Oh, you said this about women when you were 25. So? I was 25, fuck off. I'm 36 now. So procrastination and hesitation are the enemy though. So whatever you're gonna do, I suggest you start today.
A step you could take to come across as a more elegant person is always, I guess, to present yourself better. I try to give answers and I've been trying to give answers that shy away from appearance because appearance is so amazingly important and everybody already knows that I don't want to give the easiest answer in the world, but certainly dress in a way that complements your body type. Try to wear a nice watch, have your hair cut, have your hair styled, have your facial hair either shaved or trimmed so it looks nice and you look sharp. I think that is certainly one of the most important things you can do as a man or a woman. And the simple reason is that first impressions are called first impressions for a reason, and it's very hard to shake them. Now, if you have no substance as a man, let's say you look like a Calvin Klein model, and you're in great shape and you're wearing a great suit, but you have no substance, there's nothing in your brain. The first appearance isn't going to get you that far. It's only going to get you the first 30 seconds of conversation, whether it be with a woman or a man or a business partner, or you're pitching somebody in a meeting. If you sit there and you can't speak well and you have no ideas and you're stupid and you're swearing and you're using bad language, that first impression will go out of the window very, very quickly. However, it's starting the race sprinting, if that makes sense. So always make sure you're presented well. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you have a scholarship that pushes you towards your dream, if your dream is playing in the NFL, and they say, well, come play for this college team, here's your scholarship, sir, then by all means go and do that. Pass your classes with as much competency as you need to. It's not going to do you any harm, and pursue your sports career. Nothing wrong with that. But don't take out the loans. Don't sign the papers that put you in debt slavery. Don't do it, because there's no escape from generational debt. It's not worth taking that payoff, because if we talk about the odds of making it into the NFL or the NBA, they are low. Calculate the odds with the millions upon millions of university degrees that are handed out by universities every single year, even in a country like the United States alone. What are the odds that that degree is going to make you a millionaire in the short term, in the first 10 years, 15 years? The odds are, I'd say, a lot worse than somebody who's pretty good at football trying to be an NFL prospect. So what's the actual payoff? Signing those papers and getting into debt slavery, I don't think is worth it. I think it's the worst gamble ever. If there was a 50-50 chance that you'd have all your debt paid off in 2 years and you'd be living a nice life, maybe then, with a 50-50 chance, you have a 1 in 10,000 chance of that degree specifically putting you in a place where your debt's gone and your life is great. I'll tell you how university degrees have become inflated. In the same way the word model has become inflated. I am 36 years old, and I remember a time there was 2 or 3 girls in my hometown who I knew were models. You'd find them on pictures of shampoo bottles and on TV commercials, and you'd be like, this girl from my town is a model. With the advent of Instagram, which is essentially a university that prints out model degrees, what's happened is the word model is meaningless now. Oh, I'm a model. Wait, you make a very decent living and make a great income doing professional modeling. Well, no, but I have this Instagram profile and I get booked for various jobs and photo shoots, and all these people want to. There's no such thing as a model in the traditional sense anymore. They're much harder to find, because any girl who says she's a model, you're not impressed by it anymore. You have to actually look into their life. Does she have a great agency? Is she at London Fashion Week? That's my test. Has she been to London, Milan, or Paris Fashion Week? If not, you are not in fact a model. So I'm a doctor. Wow, great. It's the 1940s and you're a doctor. You must be great. You must know medicine. You must be adept with the highest levels of medical science. Oh, no, I'm a doctor. Why are you a doctor? Oh, you have a PhD in gender studies because you invented something new about men being women and women being men. And you've technically, I guess, grown the field of expertise, which is what it takes to get a PhD. So you're a doctor too. The man who thinks men are women and women are men is now also a doctor technically, because a piece of paper says he is. It's a scam. That's standard. Introducing yourself with your first and last name is absolutely what you should do. And even if it's somebody famous who I'm meeting and that person knows exactly who I am, them and all their bodyguards and security guards and staff will say, hi, Tristan Tate, nice to meet you. Look him in the eye. I'll always tell him my first and last name. That is a standard playbook. You have to do that. Graduating out of brokey land today in today's society isn't about being a millionaire. It's about having a high income. And I would put that income somewhere along the lines of $500,000 to $1 million per year in income, because that is enough to take care of all of your creature comforts, to live, to eat, to do whatever you like, to have a few nice things, even to have a nice car, and still put hundreds of thousands away every year. Hundreds of thousands is going somewhere else, into crypto, into offshore, maybe into a Dubai real estate play that you're doing. That's the only way to truly escape the matrix. I think you need $500,000 to $1 million per year. Then you're comfortable, and then you're literally no longer a brokey. You will have things that less than 1% of the population gets to have, like a second home, like a home owned outright in these days, like a fast car. If you're clearing $35,000 a month after your taxes, then you're no longer a brokey. You're not rich, you're not successful, you're not in the top 1%, you're not a baller, but you're not a brokey. 35,000 is the benchmark. You know what else you could do if you were broke? You could find a business to start that takes very little money to start. Now, I ran a webcam studio, and I'm talking about it more and more these days because of this stupid police case against me and these stupid false accusations. So a webcam studio was an example of a business that at the time when I was young and broke, I didn't need very much money to start. I had the expertise into how all the websites worked. And how to build social media profiles. The girls were obviously pretty. You needed a laptop and a webcam and a keyboard. And that's all you really needed to get started. And you could make thousands of dollars per week that way. And then you could scale your business from there. Now, there are many different businesses that will take your time up, but don't cost money to start. Even in your local area. I mean, you have a lawnmower, you got no money. Maybe you need $500, $600, $700 before you can buy the equipment you need to get it to the next step. Go door to door with your lawnmower before you can hire some Mexican to do it for you and cut everyone's grass before you have the time to register a company, hire an employee, and get him cutting grass for you and then scale from there. So find a business that doesn't take much to start up. Certainly don't go around asking people for money like people ask me all the time. Hey Tate, I'm broke, but I've got this business idea, I need 50 grand. If you're good at business and you have a good business mind, you will find a business that you can do without begging me for money, because I'm never gonna see that 50 grand again.
And I've never broken any laws. I don't care at all. In fact, I am so happy that I ran that webcam studio. I almost am tempted, just as a fuck you to Romania, to open a new one. There's 3,000 of them here anyway. I might just open one and hire a bunch of models and say, come and arrest me because it's not a crime. But I think that goes against my newfound morality and my values, so I won't do that. But I could, and the prosecutors from DCOT could literally suck my dick because there's nothing wrong with that business and it's a fully legal tax payable business and there are studios all over this country. So people often ask me if I'm ashamed of running that webcam studio, and I'm like, no, I'm exceptionally proud of myself. I learned so much about, I think, the male condition, how lonely men are, how sad men are. And this is something that me and Andrew talk about a lot, men's mental health. I learned a lot about male-female dynamics. I learned a lot about just general how to manage a business. It was a very interesting business to run. It was an incredibly interesting business to run. And keep in mind, I don't come from a world where I have rich parents or successful parents. I don't have a university education. I'm not from I didn't go to a good school. I come from probably the worst town in England. It's still the worst town to live in England. And I made a successful business out of running a webcam studio. And now I preach against it. I'm far more qualified to preach against the consumption of adult content and the creation of adult content because I'm a former industry insider. I'm very much like a former drug dealer who knows how bad drugs are because he saw the effects it had on his customers. So I like all the knowledge I gained from running that business. And if I could turn back time and not do it, I wouldn't. I'd turn back time and do everything exactly the same as I did.
Shopping in London is all about the sales experience, and the sales experience of the things you buy in London is better than almost anywhere in the world. New York, comparable. Some places in Dubai, comparable. However, even when I was in the Rolls-Royce showroom, signing the papers for the car, looking the car up and down, etc., there was champagne in my hand, all the champagne I could drink. You're sitting there, getting pissed. It's part of the English culture. I think that's why English do it best. It's exactly the same on Savile Row when I go to get my suits made. When I go and I try this jacket on for size, it's a bit too big in the shoulders and they're pinning it down, etc. There's a gin and tonic in one hand, a champagne in the other hand. You're talking, you're making stupid jokes, you're feeling all these expensive materials, you're making stupid decisions, you're drunk as fuck, you have a good night out, you go home and you're hungover the next morning, you look at your tailoring bill and you're like, I've spent 160,000 pounds, haven't I? However, it's totally worth it. The shopping experience for the most expensive things in the world is not just about picking up the item. Procuring the item is secondary. And it should be the same. London's getting dangerous nowadays, but even if you go into a Patek Philippe shop and you've ordered this watch, obviously, you would have had to order it in advance and it's ready and you go in there to pick it up. It's, oh, hello, Mr. Tate, how are you? Please take a seat. Would you like a glass of champagne? Even when Andrew goes into Armani, for example, because he's such a well-known customer, it's, oh, hi guys, how are you? You sit down, here's some booze, not for Andrew because he doesn't drink, and let me bring all the things in your size that I think you'll like. That's a shopping experience like no other. It's very different from, I remember going through the racks at Matalan. If you're English, you'll know the reference, and trying to find a pair of jeans that fit me after all these pairs of jeans and nothing's tailored and nothing fits and it's horrible. And then I find a pair of jeans and it's £4 more than I have in my pocket because I've only got £30 and you can't negotiate. Shopping sucks unless you're a millionaire. The term millionaire was coined at the beginning of the 1900s, and millionaire was impressive back then. My 1963 Aston Martin DB5, when it was first sold, cost £4,100. Can you imagine the spending power of £1 million? £1 million back when the fastest, most exotic car in the world was £4,000? A millionaire meant something. You could buy mansions, multiple mansions, set your family up for life. The term millionaire is still thrown around as some kind of accolade, But the true difference between millionaire in the early 1900s and millionaire now is maybe 90, 100 times. Being a millionaire in 1920, you'd have to be worth 150 now to brag about the same level of wealth and spending power. So people want to brag about having $100,000 salary, this magical 6 figures. Well, 6 figures doesn't actually mean anything anymore, does it? Because the problem with 6 figures is, one, you pay 40% tax because taxes are eating your ass, and you're left with $60,000. $60,000 every single year. That is not much money at all. You're expected to have a house and a family and raise some kids on it. A Big Mac or a Whopper is about $6 in today's economy. $6 in today's economy. That's 10,000 sandwiches per year. That's it. 10,000 sandwiches. 30 sandwiches per day. 30 sandwiches per day is all you can afford, and you make 6 figures. 30 fucking sandwiches? Enough to feed you and your friends? It's embarrassing. Your 6 figures doesn't mean anything. Pitching face-to-face, business meetings. On the phone, you can hear the confidence in somebody. You can hear how they're coming across. It's the way I'm speaking to the camera right now. I'm not speaking to the camera like, you know, when you're pitching people. They can hear it on the phone, but in person, they can feel it. Nice, firm handshake. Sitting like this, trying to explain your ideas. Being animated with your hands when you're pitching your ideas. Being excited in your voice when you're pitching your ideas. If I were to sit here and say like, yeah, you know, when you're pitching people in person, what you need to do is be excitable and, you know, make sure that you're coming across right. It's not the same. It's not the same. You have to have the energy. You have to have the fire. You certainly don't have to seem like it's the most important thing in the world, like you care more than anything else in the world, but you need to seem like you care more than them. That's the key. If this business has a problem and I can fix it, I care about this man's business visibly more than he does during that meeting. That's the only thing that's going to get a man excited. There are very few types of sales where a salesman can sit back and be like, well, you know, here's the price, here's the best I can do, do you want it or not? And I've been sold those things in some ways. I went into the Rolls-Royce showroom in London, and the guy's name, I believe, was Warren or Stephen. It may have been Stephen, actually, the guy who sold me the Rolls-Royce. Older gentleman, very well dressed, very smart. It was £500,000 on this price tag of this car. It was the only one for sale. He knew it was the only one for sale. He knew if I didn't want to buy that one, I'd have to wait 6 months after ordering one. And he said, well, you know, I've been doing this a long time, guys. 465, best I could do, yes or no? And I was like, cool, yes. Because he's in a very unique position as a salesman. He hasn't come to me and said, hey, Tristan, do you want to get around in luxury? Here's a brand new product called a Rolls-Royce Wraith. That didn't happen. I saw the car, I fell in love with it. I walked into his showroom, as hundreds of time wasters do every day. He's busy, he doesn't care, there's one for sale, and he made the close. But that is a very exceptionally difficult type of sales to get into. How many Toyotas has Steven sold in his lifetime? How many Lancias? How many Austins? I'm talking about old car brands that were around in his time. He's a much older man. How many Mini Coopers did this guy sell to get to the elite pinnacle of sales when he is in the London Rolls-Royce showroom selling their premium vehicles? Probably a lifetime of work, so he deserves to be there. But he's done plenty of hard closes on Land Rovers and Jeeps, believe me. Absolutely. As a man, speaking as a customer, not as a businessman, as a customer of the most luxurious car garages in the world, as a customer of some of the finest tailors in the world, as a customer of some of the finest watch houses and Swiss watchmakers in the world, the number one thing you need to do is make your client feel, or if you can actually legitimately be his friend. Find something that you and your client have in common, you know, bond with him, and build a friendship with him. There's a reason I will not cheat on my tailor. And it's not because of the specific tailoring house, which I quite like, but Savile Row's filled with a bunch of tailoring houses who could, you know, after a few runs, make me things that I'm perfectly happy with, I'm sure. But it's the people. It's the people in that store who I like and respect. That's why I will not leave. So it's exactly the same way as most men don't cheat on their barber. Why? A lot of the times he'll talk to you, hey man, how you been? How's your business? How's your breakup? And he remembers your issues, he remembers your problems. Be friends with your customers if you're doing anything that's high ticket and anything that's expensive. If you've become an integral part of a man's business, say you're in charge of his newspaper advertising, whatever it is, if it's a big client of yours and you are important to him, make sure you build that friendship. The only time that's not necessary is if you're selling ashtrays online and emailing people to see if they want some cheap consumer product. But besides that, friendship is the way. You have to understand that nobody cares about your problems and no one cares about your life. Most people care only about their problems. So how are you going to solve my problems? That's an incredibly important part of reaching out to anybody. If someone were to say to me, for example, hey Tristan, I don't think your videos are quite up to speed. You got the best cars, the best women, the best whatever, best suits, but your videos, they're only 8 out of 10. I'm the best guy for the job. I'll think, you know what, let me at least hear this guy out. But idiots try to pitch me all the time. I've got an example today. Today, someone said, Tristan, you've got a problem that I could solve. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Good, 10 out of 10 star. Well, Alex, the kid who used to wash your cars, you're now not allowed to talk to him because he's been taken away and banned from speaking to you. So I want the job washing your cars. And I was like, when they banned me from talking to Alex, they also took all of my cars. What the fuck are you going to wash? Well, you know, I'm just saying. So he started so good and snowballed into a tragedy so fast. He crashed and burned in front of my eyes on a Twitter DM out of nowhere. But yeah, certainly trying to solve their problems is the way forward. I'll tell you what I don't care about. Hey Tristan, my name's Steven. I'm from Utah. I'm 21 years old. A while ago, I was watching you and your brother's videos, and it really gave me the motivation I needed to break out the matrix. You see, my mom has a problem with shut the fuck up! Shut up! I don't want to read your stupid message. I don't care. What are you trying to offer me? And at most of the times at the end of this message, the offer is give me money. Either for your crappy business idea or to fix your car so you can pay me back with interest like I'm some fucking loan shark. Like I could be bothered to drive to Utah and break your fucking legs for the $600 you owe me. I'm not interested in doing that. The flight will cost me more. So I just know I'm never going to see my money again. Be compendious about what you're trying to help the person achieve in your first 1 or 2 lines. Because if you don't sum it up in your first 1 or 2 lines, they are not going to be interested.
You know, they did a survey of American school children and Chinese school children, and they asked the Chinese school children, which job and which profession would you most like to do when you're older? And the Chinese school children were usually given an example like doctor or engineer or maybe astronaut or something a bit more exciting. And the number one job that all people in the West, the United States, the United Kingdom, that all school children want to do is vlogger or influencer. And the problem with that is as follows. Not many people are genuinely interesting. I think what you're better off doing is living an interesting life and learning some interesting things before you start trying to make online content, because your choices are either you're a man with influence or you're a clown. You can go viral for being a clown, or you can go viral for actually being insightful and knowledgeable and people wanting to listen to what you have to say. If you're 19 years of age, the odds are you don't know anything. I was relatively interesting for a 19-year-old. I had my kickboxing career. I'd read, probably about 1,000 books at that point. I knew a lot of stuff, but I was still infinitesimally less interesting than I am today. What you're better off doing at 19 is going traveling, going backpacking, going hitchhiking, doing some interesting things, doing some dangerous things, doing some things that give you cool stories to tell. Then and only then should you think about making online content and trying to be famous as an influencer or somebody that people on the internet may want to listen to. Because otherwise, no one gives a shit. I always took opportunities to travel and see the world from when I was very, very young. The first trip I ever took without a parent, I was 15 years old, and I went over to The Hague in the Netherlands because I had a friend who lived out there, a guy who I used to work with at the fast food restaurant, funnily enough, and that was the first trip I ever took by myself. I was going to Egypt. I looked at the pyramids when I was 17 and a half, 18. I snuck beer inside one of them actually and sat and drank beer where the sarcophagus was, so maybe that's why maybe the Pharaoh's curse is coming back to haunt me now, and that's why I'll have all these legal problems. But yeah, I snuck a beer inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. I was doing some pretty interesting stuff. I didn't have very high budgets, but I knew not to waste the little money I had on stupid things. Now I buy stupid things, but now I have all the money in the world. And when I'm free to travel again, my life is again going to be very, very interesting. I like to do things that no one else has done. So even as a 19, 20-year-old man, I was a lot more well-traveled than my contemporaries and my friends. I was a lot more knowledgeable about the world. I'd learned different parts of different languages. I'd been to countries that no one really went to, especially back then. I'd been all through Slovakia, Poland, and Eastern Europe at a very young age. And if you spoke to me at 20, or if I were to go online and start speaking, as I did at probably 24, 25, I had some interesting stories, and I was a relatively interesting person. I ran my webcam studio.
That's a very interesting thing to talk about, regardless of whether you like it or not. It's one of the reasons myself and my brother took off, because we were the only people who worked inside this industry, who were sitting in front of the camera talking about how it works, what the insights are, and we were both professional fighters. We both had our kickboxing careers. We've both been around the world a bit. So even as young men, a lot of people gravitated towards us because we had something interesting to say. If you get a job straight out of high school and you work your job 5 days a week, every single day for 6 or 7 years, and you're 25 and you haven't done anything, don't think about trying to be an online influencer. And this is when you get the very worst of people online, when you don't actually have anything original to say yourself. So what you do is you just regurgitate other people's content. When Andrew first became popular, there was a whole series of Andrew Tate copycats. They'd sit around, they'd try and say the same things, and they try and describe the way Andrew works and the way Andrew lives, and I guess use stolen valor, essentially, to pretend that they're this insightful man who understands male-female dynamics better than anyone else. But at the end of the day, all of those people have now disappeared. Andrew Tate copycats have disappeared from the internet. Why? Because they weren't authentic. No one gravitated towards them, and they never built a solid following. So you don't have to be like me, and you don't have to be like Andrew, and you don't have to be like Jake Paul. You don't have to be like anyone on the internet. You have to be like you, and you have to think, what is so interesting about you or unique about you that millions of people, or at least thousands of people, are going to think, you know what, I want to hear what this guy has to say. And if you don't have something that you can immediately think of that makes you stand out from the crowd, then I would suggest putting down the camera, putting down your editing software, and going out and exploring and enjoying the world for 2 or 3 years and doing something interesting, learning some interesting facts, getting some interesting stories behind you. Then people might want to listen to you. If you're a 17-year-old kid who lives with your mom and your dad, where do you go? I guess that really depends on which country you're in. And doing dangerous things as a man is a very good way of getting credibility, and it's a very good way of people looking up to you. So when you have very, very low budgets, some of the things that you could do aren't necessarily safe, but as a man, to live an interesting life, we all have to take risks, right? If you live in California, I don't know, hitchhike from California to New York City or to Florida. Try to get somewhere else without any money, without a car of your own. You know, do something interesting. There was a guy who I still speak about to this day. He rode his bicycle from the Netherlands down to a city in Romania, and I went to meet the guy. And I guess he was quite an interesting person, but that's something no one else had done. He was sleeping under bridges and sleeping under motorway passes in the Romanian forests, which are filled with bears, as you know if you've ever seen any of my footage driving through them. And it was just an interesting thing to do. And I think that that's something that he'll have forever, and it's something that he'll carry around with himself forever, and he'll always have a very interesting story to tell, you know? Go interrailing. Get a backpack, take a train in France, try and get to Moscow, Russia. Do it. There's a guy, famously, maybe the best kid at it, is called Lord Miles. He's a good friend of myself, a good friend of my brother. He went to Afghanistan, got arrested by the Taliban. He went onto Snake Island off the coast of Brazil, where humans aren't allowed to go. And he keeps doing what I guess you could describe as dumb shit. However, for a young man, he's got some of the most interesting stories that I've ever heard. And he has stories that are so cool, I don't have those stories. Why? Because he's taking it to the furthest extremes, which you don't need to do, but you do need to do something interesting. The term influencer is very hard to define, and I massively dislike being referred to as an influencer because I didn't make my money or become successful or become well known because of my antics online. A lot of people start on YouTube, even the biggest YouTubers in the world, they start on YouTube doing stupid dances, doing stupid pranks, doing stupid stunts, and they get more views, and as they get more views, they get more money. They use that money to live a more interesting life, and it's this upward spiral, I guess, in terms of being an influencer. That is their job. I'm not an influencer. I'm a man with influence. I already had money. I already had stories, I already had a successful life, I already had a Lamborghini before I decided to post anything online. I think I bought a Lamborghini only about a year or two after Instagram was even invented. So avoid being a content creator for the sake of being a content creator. When someone asks me, what do I do? And especially when I was younger, I'd say, well, I'm a professional kickboxer. Yes, I make videos on the internet, but I'm a professional kickboxer. Then it was, oh, well, I make videos on the internet, but I run this interesting business. It's a webcam studio. Well, you know, I make videos on the internet, but I run one of the world's largest online universities, teaching hundreds of thousands of young men and women how to get rich and how to make money online. I own university.com. Those are my accolades. What do? I'm a car collector. What do you do? I've always got something about me more than just the fact that I make videos online, because I don't need to make videos online. And I don't need to do podcasts, and I don't need to stream, and I don't need to push anything out there in order to live my successful life. In fact, my life would probably be a lot less complicated and a lot simpler if I didn't do these things. But I guess this is my way. As an older man who's taken a bunch of risks when I was younger in the kickboxing ring and going to dangerous places, I guess this is my way of dancing with the devil, if you like. This is my way of walking the tightrope, because I'm very aware that a lot of the stuff, especially my brother says, puts a big target on our backs. It puts a very big target on our backs from some of the world's most powerful people, and they know that millions of young men listen to us, so they want us in jail and they want to put us away. It's interesting and it's fun and it keeps life interesting. I guess that's why I don't quit. But also I get this weird sense of satisfaction that all the people who send me fan mail that I help, Tristan, you've changed my life. Tristan, I'm fitter, I'm stronger, I'm richer, I'm making a bunch of money in the real world, and it's all because of you. That's something that I wouldn't want to give up either.
So would you say you still have the sales, you would, 1 second, sorry, voice cracked.
You need a cigar. It helps the
words
flow smoother.
I'm gonna get to this. Watch.
Works for me.
I'm gonna get to this. Would you say you still have the sales skills in you?
100%.
Yeah?
If I went broke tomorrow, the problem is because I'm famous, the Tate brand in and of itself is worth so much. I couldn't go broke. If I went broke, I could make the money back somehow.
Yeah.
But I could start selling cigars or ties or something. Yeah.
So if I told you right now, sell me a cigar, putting you on the spot.
You're putting me on the spot to sell you this cigar?
Yep.
Okay, what's your experience with cigars? Do you like cigars?
Sometimes they can get to my throat a bit and then end up coughing or something like that.
Well, that's your problem. That's because you've been buying the lower quality cigars. What's your typical budget when you purchase each stick?
I think the most I've spent on a cigar is probably about £200.
See, well, that's your problem right there, because this cigar actually costs $350 per cigar, and the way that the tobacco is aged before they roll it is the key. The smoothness of the cigar comes not when you make it, not when you roll it, not when you put the label on it, but it's the process after picking the tobacco to drying it, flavoring it, spicing it, and aging it. And that's where the smoothness comes in, like a fine whiskey or a fine cognac. So what you need to do is smoke fewer cigars per week. Don't go for 3 or 4 at 100, 200 bucks each. Just treat yourself every Friday night to one of these. This is truly exceptional. The coughing will stop, the smoothness will be there. You'll notice a greater enjoyment from your cigar experience than you've ever enjoyed before. It's $350. Do you want this?
I don't know, Tristan, $350 seems a bit out of my budget, man.
Well, you know what? If you can't afford it, that's perfectly fine, because I have customers who can. And things like this, they don't stay on the market for very long. So this is definitely going to go if I put it in the humidor at the cigar store. So if you don't want to buy it, it's no problem for me. And you could stick to what you have and keep coughing.
Gears have got me right there. Light the cigar up. I just want to, while you lit your cigar, I just want to talk about that quickly as well, right? That cigar, that lighter you got right there.
Yes.
Talk to me about it, because we'll talk about it off camera, and I was like, nah, this is crazy.
This is an ST DuPont roulette complication lighter. Cost me $55,000. It's one of the jewels of my lighter collection.
I think I just made a full mess of that, didn't I?
Yeah, you did, and you cut it badly, but it's okay. It's all right.
We're trying.
You cut it. See, your inexperience is showing just
inexperience,
there.
Yeah, we're
no
inexperienced with this one, yep.
So this has a roulette complication in it. It's got rubies. It's made by Tissot, the watch manufacturer, the mechanism inside. It's made out of white gold,
yep.
And has a flame to light your cigars with. So now, ask me to sell you this lighter.
God.
Not worth it. Can't do it.
Really?
Nope. Be super rich and be super extravagant, and maybe you'll buy it because you're insane like me, but there's no way I can convince you to buy this lighter.
But why would you justify spending that much money on a lighter? I get that you smoke cigars and you like cigars.
Yeah.
But smoking that much money on it is insane.
Roll the top towards you.
Oh, towards me, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Why would I buy that lighter? Because I like it. You know, when I was young and poor, I'm going to explain this. When I was young and poor, I used to see people buy very expensive things, and I would think of all the things I could buy instead. You have to keep it in your mouth while you light it, and there we go, until the whole end is glowing red. Smoother than your other cigars, right? There we go. You know what? This one's on the house. I'm not going to charge you $350. No,
close it.
Yep, it's closed. So, lighters like this, I mean, I used to see rich people buy things like that, and if I was broke, if I was 19 and you were to put me in front of a person who bought a $55,000 lighter, I'd be like, oh, $55,000, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'd upgrade my car, I'd buy a new bed, I'd rent a bigger apartment, I'd do all these things with 55 grand. That's a waste. What should I have done with the money instead? Me. I already run a massive charity. I already give loads away. I already feed kids all over the world. I already have everything I want. Why not have that lighter? It becomes a matter of why not. You know, why would you buy a Zippo for $50 as opposed to a 50-cent lighter for this plastic? It does the same thing. Why? It looks slightly cooler. Does it do anything different? No. It's harder to fill up. It's more hassle. You'd be more annoyed if you lost it. Well, that's that. However, to me, $55,000 is probably very similar to $50 to a lot of people out there who own the Zippos.
I think the 4-hour workday is a bunch of bullshit. I think that it's a privileged position that when you're already in a position of power and success, like myself, I can work 4 hours a day, maybe, and maintain everything that I have. It's like training. It's like training. If I were to say you only need to work out 30 minutes a day to be in good shape, you'd call me a liar, and I probably am lying. However, if you're a big fat fuck and you spend 2 years training 2 or 3 hours a day getting into amazing shape, once you're in amazing shape, if you watch what you eat, 30 minutes a day can probably maintain most of what you've gained so far. So I think the 4-hour workday is a myth. I think that it's a myth written by successful people who only need to do a little bit to maintain what they had, or perhaps grew up in or were born in such a position where they could just do the minimal amount to continue the success of their family or the legacy of their father or whatever companies they were originally hired into by family members. Yeah, I think you should be working 18-hour days when you're young. Burnout exists in your later years. So there was a study I read once, it was done on exercise and what types of exercise are good for you and what types of exercise are bad for you. And there's a type of exercise that's bad for you overall, and it's classified as toil, T-O-I-L, as in toiling in the fields. Toil is exercise, but it's exercise that is overall negative for your health. So let's say you are carrying bricks back and forth. Okay, in your 20s it may make you stronger, but 40 years of carrying bricks back and forth has shortened your lifespan by 30, 40 years. Your joints are shot, your back is shot, everything is shot. So burnout does actually exist because we all are human. However, I don't think it exists in your younger years. I used to work 2 jobs and train 3 or 4 hours a day at the kickboxing gym when I was 18 to 26, 27. I don't think you can get burned out when you're younger. I think if you are young and you're strong and you're fit, go and work on an oil rig. Go work on an Alaskan fishing vessel. Do something crazy. Yeah, it's dangerous. Yeah, it's hard. However, these people are making, $100, $150, $200 an hour in a lot of cases. Why not do that instead of something comfortable? You're in your 20s, you're invincible. So avoid burning out when you're older. You have to be a lot more intelligent with your choices, I think, when you get past 30 years old. But as a young man, there's no such thing. Just go for it.
Well, from a networking standpoint, the number one thing you have to remember, because I'm now at a stage in my life where a lot of people want to get to know me, so I see it from the other end. As a younger man, I would introduce myself to people and try to get to know them because they were important. Now I'm on the other side of the equation. The main thing to remember is that if you treat people like you're a fan, then they're going to treat you like you're one of the fans. That's it. If you treat people like a celebrity, they're going to treat you like a fan. So many years ago, even when I was not famous and not even relatively successful, or before I had any money, when I would meet famous people, I met a few famous actors through my kickboxing. You'd speak to them one-on-one, like a normal person. You'd introduce yourself. You'd ask them their name even, not in an obnoxious way, even if you already know what it is. And the best way to go about it is when you're working the room and you finally get face to face with these people. Do not ask for selfies. Do not ask for pictures. Do not act shocked or surprised or like a fan. Do not worship them. When I was sitting with that famous rapper the other day, just sat down on the couch and we were shooting the shit man to man for over 45 minutes, an hour. I didn't ask him about his songs. I didn't ask him about his music. And we just talk like men. So that's the best way to network, I guess, is that when you finally do get the opportunity to speak to people, speak to them like a normal person. Otherwise, they're never going to take you seriously. In terms of your local town, if you want to become more of a somebody in your local town, which I think is a very important thing to aspire to do, because especially if you're going to stay there for a very long time, and especially if you're not perhaps as worldly as me and and you're not going to travel as much as I do, the number one thing that I like to do in my hometown and in a new town is to get known in all of the best spots that there are. So if you walk into the best restaurant and they already have a table reserved for you 24/7, or the best bar and they've got a spot at the bar reserved for you 24/7, you'll be surprised how many high net worth people who are worth knowing, and women, will pick up on that. You'll be surprised that when the waiters and the valet parkers and the hotel receptionists know your name and say, "Hello, Mr. Tate," and treat you with respect, you'd be surprised how many people pick up on that. So tip very heavily. 1, go to the nice places, treat every member of staff with respect, and before you know it, you'll be better known and more respected in your home city. Spending a lot of money is an investment. in your city. Spending a lot of money on vacation, if I'm somewhere where I'm never going to be again, it perhaps matters a lot less. But even if you do something stupid, very stupid, even if you go to the local casino and you gamble $50,000 and, say goodbye to everyone and smile and walk out with a smile on your face, you are now a well-known person. If you go out to a club and you spend $25,000 on champagne, a crazy spend that they are never used to seeing, you'll be surprised at how often you get asked back and invited back. There's a nightclub actually in Belarus that still messages me to this day, when are you coming back to Belarus? Because they never had anyone walk in there and spend $30,000. So it's a very good way of getting known. And yeah, it is absolutely an investment. It's an investment in your reputation. It's an investment in your reputation, and it's an investment in terms of, what people think of you as a man and your status and your standing, I guess, in the hierarchy of your city. I'll be perfectly honest, geography is one of the most important things to that. There's about 5 or 6 cities in the world where the people hang out, and you have to know the places in those cities where the people hang out. So again, you have to have your dress code right, you have to have your manners right, you have to have at least some money to be able to get into the door of those places. The world works in a very strange way when it comes to high-level men and especially beautiful women as well. Imagine it in terms of 3 different rooms, and one room is free to walk inside, and it's where all the fat chicks and the brokies hang out. One room costs $2,000 to walk inside, just to get in the door, and there are the average-looking girls and the guys with a bit of money. And then one room costs $100,000 to walk into, and that's where all the 10 out of 10s hang out, and all the millionaires and billionaires and people you want to network with. That's exactly how the world actually works. That's not an analogy, because all of the places where the people who you want to meet are costs at least some money, or you have to have some type of reputation or some type of standing or some type of network or good friends to actually get into these places. So if you're in Bucharest, Romania, your odds of running into a high-value person who you think is going to be of any use to you is pretty much zero, because I probably don't want to talk to you, and neither does Andrew, and you don't know anyone else in the city. But Los Angeles, certainly, Miami, New York, London, Dubai, Singapore, there are places in the world where the people hang out. And depending on what you want to do and who you want to know, all depends on where you go. And then you just have to work your way up until you're in the same room as these people. Networking is all about making it. So you can't just network after you've made it. You have to have armed yourself with a skill set that makes you useful to people. It's no good, becoming the man in your hometown, living in LA, networking, working your way up, knowing that you can get into the best bars, the best restaurants, etc. And then when you're there, just being a jackass and not having any skills and not having anything to offer people. If you come up to me and say, hey, Tristan, I'd like to work with you, for you, you better have something good to say. So it's not just the networking aspect of it. It's what you're doing in your spare time. What are you reading? What are you learning? What can you possibly offer people? Because people like me don't really need money, so I don't care about your business idea. You probably need my marketing skills more than I need you and your business idea. I don't care about hiring you because I have the best people to do all of the jobs I want, the best cameramen, the best security guards. So if you don't have something really unique and special to offer the people who you're trying to meet, you're just going to come across as someone who's pestering them. And being pestered is very annoying when you're famous. That all depends on who you're trying to meet, but I would say the number one would be health and fitness. People will take you a lot more seriously if your clothes fit well and you're muscularly built and you're strong and you go up and give a firm handshake. If you're a fat sack of shit, people are not going to take you as seriously. That's just the way that the world works. So that's the base that you have to work off of as a young man, because maybe your IQ isn't that high, but maybe you're a nutritionist and personal trainer. Nutritionists and personal trainers to the ultra wealthy and to the celebrities of the world do very, very well. In fact, I heard of one actually. He was gifted a Ferrari for all of his hard work, but then he was arrested and had his car stolen by the police. That's quite an amusing story. But yeah, if he didn't have his particular skill set, I would never have met him and I never would have associated with him, and he never would have worked for me. He never would have bought that Ferrari. On top of health and fitness, for making a good first impression, your ability to speak, your speaking voice, because that communicates into everything you do, whether it's sales and marketing, website design, fitness, training, whatever you think you have to offer people, you have to be able to convey the idea to them. You have to be able to explain the idea to them. Again, sales skills. I advise anybody, if you're young and you're broke and you don't have a job, take up a sales job. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if you're selling windows or newspaper advertisements over the phone. Take up a sales job, because life is sales. My cameraman had to sell me his skills before I hired him. Even meeting beautiful women is sales. You have to convince them to let you waste their time and spend time with them. So everything is sales. So your sales skills, your speaking voice, your health and fitness, and your general appearance are all the most important things. I would say, yeah, absolutely. Get a commission-only sales job. Get a sales job that offers you no basic salary, because it teaches you lots of things. One, the art of sales and closing a deal and actually bringing money in is very important. But two, it teaches you work ethic and hunger. Because when I worked commission-only sales jobs, it was a matter of, I'm not going to eat unless I sell these windows. And, I'd take a 3-hour drive down to whichever house I was going to give the presentation in. I'd sit there, stare in the mirror, splash some water on my face, snap into sales mode, knock on the door, and then make my presentation. And I was very, very good. And yeah, sales is a skill that Andrew and I have even to this day, but you have to understand absolutely everything, from the camera that's recording me to the chair I'm sitting on to this wooden paneling. There's somebody in every single company that makes everything that is somehow in charge of sales and marketing. So just think about things. Think about the items around you in the room. Think about the items you use every day. When you go and buy something, why did you buy it? Why did you buy it, and who convinced you to buy it? You could be ordering a coffee from Starbucks. Why? Why are you ordering the coffee from Starbucks? Who behind the desk of Starbucks HQ all those years ago sat and came up with the strategy that made you know what the brand is about and go there and actually buy their coffee? Obviously, boycott Starbucks, but that's just an example. But think about it when you buy things. Think about your reason for buying them. And then your mind will start thinking a lot more like a salesman. Yeah, if you're leaving university or high school, sales is definitely the field you should get into. It's the field you should get into, because no matter what you learn and no matter what skill set you actually develop on top of sales, you have to convince people to use your product or service one way or another. Andrew and I are very good at sales, but anything you learn inside of the real world, even, whether it be AI content creation, that's all well and good, and you could be the best in the world. But if you can't convince people to use your service and actually pay you money to do the things that you're good at, then it doesn't matter. It's all for nothing. So you should definitely get into sales.
Elegance in men is a lot more about behavior than the way you dress. It's not a costume you can put on. It's very much your mannerisms and the way that you behave. If you were to put me in sneakers and sweatpants, I would still fit in a top-end restaurant more so than I would have done at 19 wearing a full suit. It's the way you open doors for people, the way that you greet the waiters, the way that you greet the staff, the way that you treat your guests. If you're driving a lady, particularly, and you're not in the West where they've all become radical feminists, by all means, get out the car first, walk around the side, open the door. It's something that you can't wear, it's something that you have to be. So read up tips on basic etiquette, how to hold your knife and fork, how to hold a glass of wine by the stem and not by the bowl of it at the top, and you'll fit in a lot more at the better places and seem a lot more elegant, regardless of what you're wearing. There's nothing wrong with being a gentleman. The only thing that there's a problem with today is simping. People on the internet who are pretty much incels, who subscribe to a very toxic idea of what red pill masculinity is, will see me with this beautiful girl having purchased these flowers and think simp. For all the young men out there who get very confused by the terms used on the internet, I would say simping is one thing and one thing only. Simping is an unfair exchange of value. That's what simping is. If a girl doesn't know I exist and I found her address, I'm sending flowers to her house just to make her happy, that very much is simping. If I am waiting by the door to my office going into work and trying to open the door for every single woman in the hope that they'll recognize me, that is simping. Buying flowers for a work colleague who isn't interested in you is simping. However, if you are trying to get a woman to take you seriously in terms of starting a relationship with her, then very few things you can do can be considered simping. Because as I said, that's an unfair exchange of value. If the value you get at the end is a girlfriend, or maybe even a wife or family, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with, buying them flowers, opening the door, opening their car door. Even if you pull up at her house, jump out, run around, open it up, let her in, close the door, run right back around and get in the driver's seat. These are all very standard gentlemanly moves that you can make. It's when you're making them for women who will never have a serious interest in you, that's when it becomes simping. It depends on the setting that you're talking about. If you're setting yourself amongst high value men and you want to seem more gentlemanly, then certainly cutting out foul language in the way you speak is the way. The one trick, I say trick, I guess the one trait and the one behavior I like is if somebody is getting up or leaving a table to stand up yourself And also, when anyone wants to greet you or to shake your hand, whether it be male or female, never do it sitting down. If a man comes over to me and is about to walk over and sit at my table, I'll never shake his hand sitting down. I'll never say hi to a woman and give her a half hug sitting down. You always stand up, look the man in the eyes and shake his hand, or you stand up, look at the woman in the eyes, give her a kiss on both cheeks. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 1, depending on what country you're from, but never ever greet people from your seat. That is a number 1 red flag. And also it's one of the most important because it's usually people's first impression of you. The first step to giving a proper handshake is not being a weakling. Because if you're weak and skinny and scrawny and you try to give this really hard handshake, it may be a firm handshake, but I also know you're trying too hard. Whereas if you've got big forearms and big hands and big shoulders and you've been training and you look like a strong guy, I expect your handshake to be firm. The number 1 thing when people say firm handshake is people who don't know how to meet and greet men. They think that you have to squeeze the hand. You don't have to squeeze the hand at all. Less than half a centimeter of actual movement, but your hand should be rigid and unmovable. You can't have a malleable hand in someone's hand where, if they squeeze it slightly, your fingers are going to bend. So nice firm hand, you grab and you squeeze just half a centimeter. That's it. No crushing, no trying to show you're stronger than anyone else. It's just the fact that your hand moves and doesn't give anything back. That makes a firm handshake. If you start squeezing people's hands, they're going to think you're a dick. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of variations. And to be fair, if you're a worldly person, there are a bunch of variations to this. I think in Southeast Asia, I've been in India, Thailand, Vietnam. That's when people will give you the double handshake. They'll grab your hand, but that's very much a sign of being a subordinate. A guy who you tip heavily at a hotel will grab your hand. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. There are different etiquettes and ways to bow to certain people in Japan. I know you always have to bow lower than the person you're bowing to if he's in a position of seniority, but Japan's not a place I hang out a lot at. But before you go to anywhere new, I would certainly look up the little traits within the culture and try to play along as best as you can, because it's usually appreciated.
I used to preach that video games were a waste of time, and 10 to 15 years ago when I used to say this, they largely were a waste of time. Now they still are a waste of time. However, time you enjoy wasting isn't necessarily time wasted. So I, for example, like to read books. I read books, I listen to audiobooks. I don't benefit necessarily monetarily from them, they're just entertainment. Instead of watching TV, I read books. Some people play video games. What I would say is, whereas books can make you more interesting as a person, video games, you have to find a way of at least offsetting the damage done by the time you sink into them. By, at the very least, trying to be productive. I don't know, streaming your video game play on Rumble, trying to play competitively with other people over the internet and making videos and document your games and try and get some eyes on you so you're not just isolated by yourself messing around in your room with your face in a computer screen. I mean, most bad habits and most hobbies and most things that don't necessarily seem that productive can be turned into content creation. And that's something that we teach inside of the real world, regardless what it is. No matter, if you like shining shoes, if you do it to a professional level, you can create content and get eyes on you and get, advertisers and make money and start a channel based on that. So I think video games are a waste of time still. Yeah, they're still a waste of time and the gamers are going to get mad at me. But there are, extremely famous streamers who make a lot of money playing video games. And people say like, oh, well, they play video games, I should do the same thing. They're not just video game players though. They're entertainers, they're charismatic, they're hosting a show, they're funny. Their character looks good. I don't know. But these people who host the video game streams are more than just players themselves, because it's not the video games people are interested in. It's their personality.
Elegance in a woman, to me, is somebody who's never going to embarrass or humiliate you and somebody you'd be very proud to show off. So I don't know if women see it that same way in men, but if you come across as an elegant man, that's the kind of man that she wants to show to her friends, to her parents. Lots of women I date are very keen to show me to their friends or their parents or their families for whatever reason, in the same way that, I'd want to show off a beautiful woman to my friends. But when there's any rough edges, that's the kind of thing that will put you off wanting to show somebody off. So if a woman swears a lot, talks in a very bad manner, maybe has a really horrible accent, dresses a bit too revealing, that's the kind of thing that will make you think, okay, this woman's all right, I like her, I'll keep her at home, but I'm not going to introduce her to my friends. So elegance is certainly something that women should strive for, and men as well.
If you look at life like a video game, anything that increases one of your stats is a worthwhile hobby. I think that playing chess will make you more intelligent, helps your critical thinking. Reading books makes you more interesting and more knowledgeable. Any type of sport or physical training makes you stronger, fitter, better looking. It's going to make you live longer. So whatever hobby you want to pursue and whatever you want to do, just make sure it's something that makes you better as a person. I mean, I know young men who make jewelry, who make knives. You know, that's a very productive hobby because it's a business that they're training themselves up to do. Just try to avoid things like video games, because video games actually increase nothing. They help you in no way at all. I would argue that they probably make you less healthy, more lazy.
Not knowing how to conduct yourself, drinking too much to a point of inebriation is a big red flag. You know, if you ever start stumbling or slurring your speech, you know, there's a time and a place for that, but usually that's a big red flag for women, especially if you're out on dates. For me, I will judge men harshly on bad driving. If a man doesn't check his mirrors and he's not moving his car properly, I judge people on bad driving. Again, bad language, using too much slang when you're supposed to be in a professional setting. Knowing the difference between a casual and a professional setting is very important. It's not just the language somebody uses, because the language I'll use with my friends is very different to the language I'll use on a Zoom call with a multi-billionaire businessman. So it's knowing the time and the place for certain types of behavior, because as men, we can all be childish and we can all be juvenile, but you have to be able to distinguish one from the other. And there's people who I've met who certainly don't know how to present themselves to somebody, even somebody like myself who's wealthy and they're trying to pitch me this business idea. They show up and they're acting as though we're two friends down the pub, even though I don't know them. That's a huge red flag. You know, they should at least make the effort to try to come across as refined as possible. And if they're incapable of doing it or incapable of spotting a situation where they should be doing it in, then it's probably not the kind of person that I'd want to do business with, network with, be friends with. There's no correct answer for which accent is acceptable and which one isn't. However, some accents are better than others, which is a shame because you can't really control your accent. However, regardless of what your accent's like and what your speaking voice is like, you can always tell the intelligence behind somebody's accent, depending on the language they use, the vocabulary they use, the vernacular they use, the way they pause, the way that they take their time when putting thoughts together, the way they intonate their words. So I know very smart people who are Chinese, Nigerian, Indian, who do speak with their heavy accent. However, you know that there's a brain behind that accent. So if you're lucky enough to be born with a British or maybe an American accent and you're not using your voice to your full potential, it's one of those instances where you'll always get outpaced by somebody who's more obsessed than if you're born with natural talent. So if you're born with a BBC British accent, which I don't quite have, but I guess that would be the top rank of accents in the world, in my opinion. You know, there's an Indian guy who can sell more than you and do more business than you and close more deals than you, despite the fact that his accent is a disadvantage. That's just because he works harder than you. So make sure that you do work on your vocabulary. Download stupid apps, word of the day. Read 20 new words a day and read what they mean, learn their definitions, try to include them into your everyday vocabulary. Yeah, you're really doing yourself a huge disservice if you don't try to maximize your speaking voice. The best way to cultivate your voice, besides expanding your vocabulary, to me, would be reading out loud. Take a book that you like, or a book that isn't something very simple, no children's books obviously, and read them out loud. It's an exercise that everyone used to have us doing in school. We probably don't understand why our teachers used to make us do this. However, the way that stories are written and the way that people speak in books and the way that sentences are put together, you can tell how it's supposed to be read. You can tell you're not supposed to just zoom through all the words like you do in your head when you're mentally reading it. So literally read it out loud. You can imagine how these characters are speaking to each other. You can imagine how they're trying to convey themselves, whether it be a sad moment of the book, an action-packed part of the book, somber, happy, it doesn't matter. You know what the characters are feeling at the time. So read out loud, and then when you find yourself speaking with your friends, if you find yourself talking really fast, and you're umming and ahhing and you can't get your words together like this, then slow the fuck down. Slow down, think of what you want to say before you say it, and try to convey it in a very articulate, compendious way. There is a trick that I could tell young men that will help them close business deals, help them get girlfriends, help them make friends, help them get into the circles that they want to get into. And it's a stat, I guess, of yourself that you can expand throughout your entire life, and you should never stop expanding it. And that would be general knowledge. General knowledge is super important, because I remember I was sitting with one of the sheikhs in Dubai, and there was no alcohol at this house, of course, it was a dinner event, and they start passing around this wood that you burn, and you smell the scent coming off the wood. And I knew exactly how it was made and how it was cultivated. If you don't find it in the wild, which is very hard nowadays because it's all extinct, you have to drill certain holes into these trees and infect the trees with a certain type of mold and wait for the wood to go petrified. And I was explaining this process to him, which he already knew, but he was super impressed that I understood this part of Arabic culture and what this product was exactly. And general knowledge will always impress people. I can sit down with most people and have a conversation about most topics. Regardless of what it is, there's something that I will know about it. And as a young man, there's no reason to just, if you like sales and internet marketing, only read about that. Spend your spare time learning about things that you don't think are particularly useful. Maybe spend your spare time learning about things that you right now have no business knowing. Yachts, the different brands and makes of private jet. Learn all of this. Because when you start to sit with important people, you can at least have an idea of what they're talking about and interject in the conversation, perhaps with something they don't know. And that has made me more friends and more connections with men, women, businessmen, anyone who I was trying to get connected to than maybe anything else. General knowledge. You have to work on it. See, I like audiobooks, and even right now, you say you don't see me learning things. I am 4 hours into a 17-hour audiobook course, lectures on the Vikings and Norse mythology and Norse history. Why? So the last 2 hours when I was in my room, I was listening to it. So you don't see me learning this stuff, but I just find so many things interesting that I will make sure that instead of listening to music or doing other things, I'm filling my brain with information. So every day I'm learning something new. I don't think a day goes by when I don't learn something new from somewhere. But yeah, going down rabbit holes is always very interesting on the internet. If you find an interesting fact out about something, then read up more. I mean, Wikipedia is a tremendous resource. Everyone's forgotten about it. It's kind of fallen out of fashion, I think. But it is a tremendous resource. And when it comes to history and battles and world leaders and things like that, there are literally clickable links from each page to the next page to the next page. And you could sit and read and learn entire eras of history or entire 20-year periods in an hour or two, if you are determined enough. And this information is maybe not useful for making money and maybe not useful in the long run, but if you impress someone like me who you're trying to do business with your knowledge on something that I find interesting, then I'm going to like you more and I'm more likely to sign the contract.
Fighting is a worthwhile hobby, and it was something I did, and I consumed God knows how many hours of my youth punching punch bags and punching other people. It's very useful because it's something that you carry around with you everywhere you go. Everywhere I go, I know how to fight. If I get in a problem or an argument or a confrontation, I know how to fight, and something that I never lose. So yeah, fighting is a very good hobby. It makes you harder to kill. It's probably, I think, one of the highest return on investment hobbies that young men can possibly do. Get yourself down to a local boxing gym and learn how to fight, absolutely. I think that it doesn't teach you any massive lessons. I think that you're a lot more aware of how tough you aren't. I think that men overestimate their physical capabilities and their ability to do well in a fight, probably by 1,000 times. Like, everyone thinks they'll be fine in a fight. Everyone thinks they have this fantasy that they can just beat people up. But fighting is actually incredibly difficult. And when you really know how to fight, it makes you more paranoid because you understand how unrealistic these scenes where, scenes in movies where a guy's beating up 5 different people. Unless you're Steven Seagal, this is unrealistic stuff. So it makes you a lot more paranoid because I'm aware that if someone sucker punches me from behind and his friend starts stomping on my head, it doesn't matter how much kickboxing I know. So when you know how to be violent and you know how easy it is to hurt people and to knock them out, you understand also how fragile you are as a person. And you stop overestimating yourself in terms of what you can do in a fight, like most men do.
A lot of people end up working fast food jobs after university because they believe that doors are going to open because the degree is given to them. They get this message from their parents, they get this message from the Matrix, the media. They're sold this dream that you're going to come out of university with a degree and everybody's going to want to hire you, and you're going to be a high value member of society that's going to just jump into this 75 grand a year, $100,000 a year job. But you won't, and that's not what's going to happen. Take one university. You went to university, didn't you? how many students passed in your year? Do you know, at graduation? Guess, I don't know the size of your university. 30,000 students in a year passed at your university alone. Maybe 10,000, let's say 10,000. How long ago since you graduated? 10 years? 8 years?
No, it's 4 or 5.
4 or 5 years. That's 50,000 people have walked out of the door of the same building you went to in Texas with these pieces of paper saying, hire me, I'm worth millions of dollars per year, I'm worth hundreds of thousands per year, I'm worth at least 6 figures. 50,000 people from that one building you went to. How many universities are in the USA? I challenge somebody to do this math. How many students graduate with a university degree every single year in all of the top universities? Okay, fine. How many universities are there in the United States? How many new degrees, how many new pieces of paper are printed every single year for everybody to walk out of these buildings and wave around at employers saying, I'm worth all this money? Take that number and divide it by the number of jobs in the United States that even pay 6 figures. The number of jobs in the United States that even pay you $100,000 a year, which by the way is still broke, and you'll see the glaringly obvious scam that traditional education is. Universities used to be prestigious. You used to have to be smart to go to university. Now, any idiot can go to university. You can buy a degree even if you're unintelligent. Universities used to be for the intelligent, the smart, the industrious, and they would go there and get their degree, and they'd be rare in society. The man walking around, yeah, I have a university education. People used to brag about having somebody like that in their family, and universities used to actually mean something. However, once it became clear that there was a big business here, a big racket here, that the banks were happy to fund all the students going there and pay you all your money, universities sprung up everywhere. You could do universities online from your house. And all these people are printing these degrees every year, which are utterly meaningless. If you don't know what the next step is, I can't give you a specific answer because the next step is different for different people. What did I do? I worked on my sports career. I thought it might make me some money. It didn't. But I thought if I could become the world champion at kickboxing, I'll have some fame and some money and a good life, and I can use that money to invest in things and set myself up. And I pursued a sports career. Now, if you're not built like me, and you're not designed like me, and you're not big like me, maybe a kickboxing career isn't right for you. But certainly the world of professional sports is good for anybody with an athletic background. I'm terrible at soccer. You might be good at soccer. There's nothing wrong, instead of going to university, applying yourself towards some type of professional sport, whether it be long jumping, weightlifting, boxing, whatever you're good at. Because these people, let's be honest, are some of the most successful people in the world. When you talk about who are the richest, most successful, most famous people in the world, you don't say the guy who went to this university, the guy who went to that university. You're talking NBA, you're talking NFL, you're talking soccer, you're talking baseball, you're talking boxing, you're talking golf. So professional sports is a very, very good outlet to drive yourself into, because even if you don't make the big money, like I didn't, because I didn't, you learn a lot of hard lessons along the way. You're in great physical shape. You've learned how to deal with ups and downs and wins and losses and injuries and setbacks. You're far more prepared for the world, I believe, after a 4-year career in boxing, which ends abruptly before you made any money, than you would be if you spent 4 years studying something generic like business.
I've never purposefully been a clown, and that's what a lot of these people, even if some of these streamers do grow up to be, I guess, mature adults when they're in their late 30s and 40s, when they're closer to my age. If they do, I think they'll look back at their content and be deeply ashamed of themselves, because I think that they are purposefully being clowns. They're purposefully acting stupid and saying and doing very stupid things. Although I don't agree with everything I used to say, and although I don't smile at my old content pridefully a lot of the time, I never purposefully acted like a clown. I never made a joke out of myself or a joke out of my life. I always said what I believed was true at the time, and I always did what I thought was right or smart at the time. So, as many things as I got wrong when I was younger, I was still a young man doing my very best, to make it, out there in this cold world, and I became rich as fuck eventually, so it must have worked. Yeah, don't make a clown of yourself. If I know that, I was sitting there in front of a camera at 25 talking about how I run all these webcam models. It's come back to haunt me, obviously, because, the Romanian justice system is trying to, butcher my life because of that. But there's me at 25 talking about running webcam models or any of the stupid shit I was doing. Yeah, I still didn't make a joke out of myself. I never wore stupid costumes. I never painted my face stupid colors. I never screamed and jumped around and acted like an animal or a monkey like a lot of these people on the internet. I was doing the best I could at the time. And I wasn't right about everything, but I have nothing to be ashamed of. That's my favorite fight story, and the haters on the internet find this fight, it lasts about 2 minutes into the first round, and I tap out. It was my first ever MMA fight. But I think that's one of my proudest moments in fighting and one of my coolest stories. I just injured my shoulder, right? I was in a car crash. I hadn't done any physical training for months. I was in a lot of pain, and the head, the champion of the federation, his opponent pulled out. So the head of this fight show calls me. He says, look, Tristan, I need a fighter last minute. Andrew was in the Big Brother house at the time, so I didn't have Andrew. My fight coach was in another country. I didn't have him. I didn't have anybody. So I just said, you know what? Yeah, fuck it. I'll do it. I'll take the fight on 1 day's notice, and I'll get in there and you know, try to win. I didn't win, but I think that's one of my proudest stories in fighting, and it's a pretty cool story, if you know the background to it. The fight, at the very beginning, we were talking with the rules, and they said, look, because you've come in last minute, would you like to alter the rules? Maybe the first round, no wrestling, so it's just going to be stand-up, which is your arena. And I said, no, I don't want to alter the rules at all. I would like the rules to be full MMA rules, and I want the rules that way, because if I do knock him out, then I've won, and I'm not going to have him making any excuses. So I spoke very rudimentary basic Romanian at the time, but I heard his corner just telling him to grab me and wrestle me. So I threw 11 head-high kicks in those 2 minutes, I believe, 11. Because my arm was injured, my shoulder was injured, I couldn't jab properly, so I couldn't line up my right hand. And I knew if I could catch him with a head kick, I could actually knock him out. It didn't work. One of the kicks I missed, and I span around. That's how he grabbed me from the back and got me onto the ground for the first time. And I essentially tapped because I got off the ground the first time just by brute forcing my way up. And then when I tried that the second time, my shoulder was slipping out of place as I was pushing him. So I was like, okay, well now I can't get up. My shoulder's falling out of place when I'm trying to push this guy off me. So I just tapped him into the fight. But pretty cool story. I earned a lot of respect. All the fighters in Romania, all the fighters from the show, they work as doormen and stuff in Bucharest. I earned a lot of credit in my city and in the Romanian community for doing that.
Freedom is waking up every morning and not having to calculate the hours you have to spend doing things that you hate. That's what freedom means. Some people have jobs that are relatively low paid, but they find highly rewarding. Let's say somebody's a marine biologist. They make $50,000 a year. They're always diving down and collecting seaweed to check it for mercury levels in the ocean. If they enjoy the diving and the marine biology and that side of their job, then they wake up in the morning thinking, thank God I get to go out on a boat, dive in the ocean, swim around, do my stuff. What a nice life. They are free. I think that total freedom isn't something that men should aspire to, because there's nothing wrong, especially when you have a family and people who depend on you, with waking up thinking I'm going to do X number of hours of something I hate to make my other hours more rewarding. So I feel like there's a trade-off. But essentially freedom is the ability to do whatever you want. So if you have to go to work for 8 hours in a job that you may or may not enjoy, let's say you hate your job, but you have the best family life at home, a wife who loves you for working and makes you feel appreciated, and your kids give you a hug when you run in from work, you're pretty free, because the reward is worth what you've paid. But on a macro level, being super rich and being retired and not having a job and having $100 million in the bank would be pure freedom, because you could do 100% of what you want all of the time. And people say money isn't freedom or money isn't happiness, but they're wrong. Because they say this to me and I always ask them, okay, what do you enjoy doing? And they'll say something like, oh, well, you know, not everything costs money. I like volunteering at dog shelters. I like taking walks in the park. I like spending time with my kids. And I'll say, yeah, but imagine how much of those things you could do more if I gave you $10 million. And their face kind of drops. So the way that the economy is set up and the way that the banking system is set up, money is absolutely freedom in every single regard. No matter what you enjoy doing, you could do more of it with money. A roadmap to become more free would be either do something you hate to earn 10 times more so you can retire sooner and enjoy more of your life free, or switch career paths and stop focusing on making as much money as possible and try and find yourself in a situation where you're doing something you enjoy as much as possible. For example, some people enjoy photography and making videos. Don't understand them. I think it's nerdy. However, if they do that all day, every day, it doesn't feel like a job. You know, the way that my life is set up nowadays, I spend hours and hours in my day tinkering with the real world application and the online university, speaking to people inside of it, that's a pleasure to me. I enjoy it. I enjoy hearing and watching the success stories and seeing the fruits of my labor. So I don't feel so much like I'm working or doing something I don't enjoy. So yeah, make a bunch more money, or steer your direction in a way that you enjoy what you do. Ideally, both.